Welcome back to our generic crafting tutorial series. In the last episode, we set up our crafting bench and we set up the widget to hold all of the items that we can craft and inspect them and decide whether or not we can craft them. In this episode, we're actually going to be building the logic inside of our character to craft the item. So let's get right into that. So we're going to need to open up our inventory component here, and we're going to need to open up our player. Whoops. So if you remember in the last episode, we used these interaction events to trigger just a message here to actually to run the logic. So two different things are going to happen. Enhance is going to call the AC inventory manager, and we're going to make a function called enhance item in here. So we'll just make that function as a placeholder. And compile, save that. That way we can call it. And we are going to use all of these input values in that enhance item. So we need our item to enhance, our structure of inventory info, our cores, our integer, and success. So say inventory info, and our integer for cores to use. And we're just going to pass all that right into enhance item. But we're actually going to do that second. First, we are going to run the craft item logic in our player. And this doesn't get called from the inventory manager yet. This is a lot like a gather item where we're going to have to add experience to our class here. So we're going to make a custom event called craft item. And remember, that is why we add the I in front of interaction events, so it's I craft item, and this is craft item. That way they're not exactly the same name. If you named it craft item, then name this like player craft item or something else, because if you use identical names, it's going to crash your game pretty hard. And we're going to make sure we have those two input parameters of item to craft and amount to craft. Type name and integer. And we are just going to call that event. I don't know. Just make sure you're calling the right one. You're not calling iCraft item. It kept pulling up iCraft item for me. Oh, because I didn't add a T. Craft item. Craft item. I'm going to pull these interaction events up to where I put my other one, which is way up here. And we're just going to move these out of the way. We're going to move them over here now. So we're going to have a whole bunch of these by the end of the tutorial series, so we want them to kind of be in the same place. Same thing here with the craft item. We're going to pull that up to where we put gather item. And this is essentially going to run more or less the same type of logic here. So first we're going to need our AC inventory, and this is where we're actually going to call for the inventory to craft the item. So similar to enhance item, we're going to say craft item. And we're going to add those two parameters. So item ID and amount. We're going to say craft item. And you could name this again something different if you want. I just named it craft item. This didn't break my game, but again, it might break yours if for whatever reason you end up with duplicate names. So just name that whatever you want. I just named it craft item. And that worked fine for me. So now we're going to take our AC class manager out. We're going to get use levels. And we're going to run a branch. That way, if we are using levels, we can increase the XP for the class. So how you do this is going to be totally up to you. I just did a standard increase, so I got the get the crafting type of the item, get the required level, so get item level, and again we're going to get the crafting type as index. But if you want to multiply, like maybe the player is making 50,000 items, you're going to want to multiply this by the item level to give the extra XP for making like 10 swords at once. I didn't do that in my example, but I will do that here. And again, that's just going to say, okay, we're crafting 10 items of this item level. Instead of running this through a for loop and doing it 10 times, we're just going to multiply by the item level, and that should give us the amount of XP we would get from crafting 10 items. So we're going to pass the index, we're going to pass the required level, and yes, we are crafting this time. I'm not actually going to save here like we saved with our clear interaction here and all that stuff, because we're still inside of the widget for our crafting widget that we made in the last episode, and we save our inventory when we're done crafting there. So, oh, whoops, craft item. Whoops, and we save our XP internally with the class manager, so we don't actually need to save that here either. Okay, so we're just going to call it to increase the XP. That's going to save itself, and the items are going to be saved from the widget when we do that. It's going to call that interaction event to save the items. Speaking of which, we want to make sure that we have our save here actually doing something. So I save inventory is another trigger we're going to have to make. Put that up with the other ones. And we're just going to call the AC manager here, the inventory, AC inventory, to save player inventory. And that's just so we have a way to save the inventory that is not wholly dependent on the inventory component itself. So when we call this event trigger from the widget, it's going to go ahead and save the inventory in the player's AC inventory. Okay, so now we are going to go ahead and make those two functions, our craft item and our enhance item. We'll start with craft item. So this is going to be pretty straightforward. We're going to run a for loop for the amount, and we're going to make the first index 1 because this isn't an array, so we don't need to account for 0, right? If we're making 10 items here, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So you want to make sure that you either subtract 1 from this or you start at 1. I'm just going to start at 1. I'm going to get data table row. For the item ID, so the item to craft, in the item soft data. You don't necessarily need to do this. We could use all of the getters that we've made in previous episodes, but since I need quite a few things here, I'm just going to go ahead and get the data table row. And then for each of these, so we're running this through a for loop, we need to add to inventory the item that we are making. So the item ID, the quantity is going to be 1, and the enhancement level is going to be the enhancement level in the data table. Okay. Now we could just say add to inventory over here for the amount, but we also need to remove, okay, the amounts required to craft the item, which is why we're running this through a for loop instead of just saying add them all to the inventory. So on this for loop, we're going to take our items required. We're going to press, we're going to press F to run a for each loop, which we're actually probably going to route that anyway later on. And we're going to route this quantity required over here. That way we can condense that. We're going to get a copy of the quantity required at the index that we're looping through on the items required name. And we're going to have to run another event here called remove from inventory. But we haven't actually made that yet. We only made add item. So we need to add our custom event to remove items from the inventory, or our custom function, I should say. So we're going to make a new function here, remove from inventory. Make sure I can type today. And remove from inventory is going to take in the item info. So I'm going to say item or inventory. And the structure for the inventory info, this is going to be the item info. And we are just going to go ahead and finish up craft item real quick. That way we don't get too sidetracked. So we're going to call remove from inventory for every item that is required to craft it. We're going to make that. The array element is going to be the item ID, and the quantity is going to be the quantity here. Enhancement level can be 0 because we're not actually going to check for that anywhere when we're removing from the inventory. But when we enhance items, that'll be important later. But for now, that doesn't actually matter. Okay, so we're just looping through our items required, getting a copy of the quantity required, and telling it to remove the inventory for every item that we made. So if you made 100 iron ore, then it's going to require your 1,000 iron ingots because it requires 10 to make that. So it's going to run this basically 10 times for 10 each. So remove from inventory is going to have to do a few things. We're going to run a branch here, and we're going to keep that condition true because we're going to have an equipment system later on, and we're going to have to comment up here saying need check is item equipped, because we're going to be running this remove from inventory for multiple things, and later on if we have an item equipped somehow, we need to make sure that we are unequipping it. But for now we can just stay true, and we can just pass right by. But in the future this is going to unequip the item, and we're going to do a pass by on here. So we need a local variable here called local remaining. And this is very similar to how we did the add to inventory. Basically, we're going to loop through our entire inventory and make sure that we are removing the items from the stacks properly. And if the stack becomes empty, we're going to remove the item from the inventory. So we're going to break our inventory info here and pass our quantity into the local remaining. We're setting that as soon as we begin the function. And just like we did with our add to inventory, we're going to run a while loop for all of the remaining items. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that and pasta that down here. Did I spell remaining different? Whatever. So anyway, it's going to be our local remaining, and we're going to make this local fail variable again. What? Not that. Yes, I really want to delete it. I probably just messed up everything. Promote to a local variable called lfail. Yeah, don't make an actual variable. Make sure it's a local variable. And as expected, it tried to make the actual variable there, so fail is not working anymore. Set local fail to true. It's just me mucking things up by accidentally clicking the wrong button. So make sure your local variable that's the exact same name is actually local. If you make an actual variable called lfail, it's going to break your other stuff. So through this loop body, we need to basically do the exact same thing. We need to take our inventory content. We need to get our item info. And we need to see where this item is inside of our inventory. So we need a little function here to find the item index. So we're going to make another function called find item index. This is going to be a pure function. And it's going to take in our inventory array. And I guess you don't really need to. You could just drag out and get your inventory array if you really wanted. I'm just going to take in the inventory array. And item to find, which is a single value. We're going to run a for each with break. Take this, break it open. Take this, break it open. And we're going to make sure the item ID is equal. And we're going to make sure the enhancement level is also equal. The crows are on my roof and it's making a heck of a lot of noise. So we're going to run that and we're going to run that into a branch. So this is going to make sure that we have the item and it is the proper enhancement level. We're going to use this for a couple of things later on, which is why we're also checking the enhancement level here. But for crafting materials, if you remember correctly, the enhancement level is always going to be 0. We're going to make a local variable from this index, and we're going to call this local index. And when it's true, when we found the proper item with the proper enhancement level, we're going to return the index for that item. We're going to go ahead and break, and we're going to go ahead and return our local index. Now we need to set a default value for our local index. I'm going to call this found index, by the way. But we need to set a default value for our local index here to be -1. That way we have some kind of checksum afterwards. If we did not find the item, right, this is going to return a value that is not 0, because 0 is a valid array index. So we need to make sure that we check and see if we actually found the item. You can add a boolean here if you want. I didn't, so that's just how I'm going to do it. And we're going to say find item index. Before I forget, let's actually make sure we categorize our find item index. I'm going to put this in the getters, because that's all it is. It's just getting the item index for an item. Okay. So again, inside of our remove item or remove from inventory function, we're going to take our inventory content. We're going to find the item inside of our while loop here. Let's see if the index is greater than or equal to 0. And that is our catch we were just talking about. If it happens to be -1, this is going to fail. If this fails, we need to set our local fail to true. And we need to add some kind of message so we know why we failed out here. Whoops. So I'm just going to copy the message. And we're going to add an event log. And this should pretty much never happen because we are already checking to make sure that we have all of the items required when we're doing this. And anytime we're running remove from inventory, we're basically already checking to make sure we have the item. So this is kind of just a secondary failsafe to see if for whatever reason, maybe we had a race condition or maybe the item vanished or something happened. We didn't refresh the widget, just anything at all happened here. We have a way to fail out of this while loop and say that inventory not found, critical error. This remove from inventory should have never been called. So whatever we just did when we were testing the game was a critical error. We need to go through and we need to figure out why that happened. And if we found it, then that means the item is available inside of a stack. So we need another custom function here. And similar to add, whoops, not variable. What am I doing? Another custom function here, similar to add to stack. This is going to be remove from stack. That's going to take in the index and the amount, which we don't actually, again, need the amount. Just like add to stack only ever adds 1. This is only ever going to subtract 1, but we're going to pass the amount anyway. So remove from inventory is going to call remove from stack. The found index here is going to be that index. The amount is going to be 1. And then we're going to take our local remaining and we're going to decrement it. Okay. And that's going to loop through everything, find the appropriate slot we need to remove it from, and go ahead and remove it from that stack. And then when we are done here, I am going to add another event log, just to be extra sure that we are not failing out, because we should never be, again, failing out on this local fail. I'm going to get the local fail and make sure that we did not fail out, but this should always return success if we're calling it, because we're already making sure that we have the items to remove. So let's build our remove from stack. And this is going to get our inventory content. It's going to get a copy, not a gate. It's going to get a copy at the index that we're passing in through here. I'm going to break that open. And we are going to branch, because we need to see if the item's quantity minus the amount that is coming in. So we're going to get amount. You could just do 1 and not pass an amount here if that's what you're about. But we need to see if this amount here is going to be less than or equal to 0. Because if we are now going to have less than or equal to 0 quantity inside of an inventory item, we actually need to remove it from our inventory content here. We're going to do that. We're going to remove item, or remove index. I'm sorry, not item. And we're going to get the index. And that way we are just straight up removing the index, and that's still going to be true, right? We still remove the item. Just now, once we subtract the amount of the item we're removing from the quantity, the index is 0. That amount of the item no longer exists. We can remove the item from our inventory completely. If it is not going to be 0, then we need to take both of these, and we're just going to duplicate them down. And we're going to set the array element for that index. And we are going to make this item. We're going to pass through item ID, pass through enhancement level. We're going to pass through the subtracted value because we know that this is greater than 0, so there's at least 1 item left in this stack. So we don't want to remove the stack, we just want to adjust the amount inside the stack. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Pretty simple there, especially compared to the last episode, right? Not doing too much, we're just removing the item from the stack. And that is all for our remove from inventory. So I'm going to go ahead and label this stuff here. And instead of add, like we have add item, we're going to say remove item. Remove from stack is also going to be in the category of remove item. In craft item, we're going to give this its own category of crafting, just so it's kind of separate from everything else. By the way, does inventory have space? This can be in getters. And or wherever you put it. And enhance item is going to have its own category of enhancements. And we are about to build that function out now. Okay. So enhance item is going to be pretty similar, but a bit different. So first we're going to branch out here on our success. And basically we need to make sure that we successfully enhance the item. If we did not successfully enhance the item, we're not going to run this true. And if we did successfully enhance the item, we're going to increase the enhancement level. If not, we're going to run whatever other logic you want to run, like removing the items from the inventory, or maybe you want to break the item and completely remove it from your inventory. You could go ahead and do that here off of the false. That's not what I did. For my example, we just removed the required items and the enhancement cores that we used off of false. We didn't break the item, but that's something you're going to have to decide for your game. So we need basically another one of these getters for find item index, except we need to find the exact item index. And we're going to call this find exact index. And this is in the off chance that maybe you didn't want to pass enhancement level or something else. Basically, this is just going to check all of these values and make sure that all of these values are true before it returns that index. So basically the exact same thing as find item index, except it is making sure that this exact item with this exact quantity is being found inside of your inventory. So I guess you don't necessarily need that. You find item index would work exactly the same, but again, if for whatever reason, maybe you only check the item ID and not the enhancement level here, maybe you're doing something weird with enhancement levels, then you'll need this extra find exact item. And that's what I'm going to use here is find exact item. So item to find, pass in our inventory. And this is going to be for when it is true we successfully enhanced the item. I'm going to take our inventory content and we are going to set array element off of this true. And this array element is going to be at this index, the exact item, and we're going to make the item, okay, make the item based on a copy of the item at this exact index that we found. And you guessed it, we're going to pass in the item ID, the quantity, and we're going to just increase the enhancement level by 1. Okay, we successfully enhanced the item by 1. And that's going to set the array element that that item already existed at to just +1 on the enhancement level. Okay? Hopefully you followed along there. Not too much, right? Not too bad. And then we're going to call remove from inventory. And again, this is going to be different based on what you decided to do. If you want to break the item or, you know, do something else here, that's totally something you're going to have to write in this false logic. We are just, again, regardless of whether we succeeded or not, we're removing all the cores we used and all of the items that were required to craft this from our inventory. So the first thing we're going to do is make this. Again, our item ID for our cores is 9999, 9999. I'm going to get the cores used, and we're just going to pass that right on through and go ahead and remove all of the cores that we used from our inventory. That's the first thing we're going to do. The second thing we're going to do is we're actually going to need this item ID. So I'm going to route this over here, and we are going to get items required to craft. You guessed it, we're going to run a for each through all of the items that were required to craft. We're going to get a copy of the quantity required, just like we did before, and we're going to remove all of these from our inventory. So our loop body is going to be remove from inventory. And we're going to make this based on the quantity required, the item ID. And the enhancement level, again, can be 0 here because these are the materials that we used to enhance the item. If you're doing something weird with that, that'll be up to you. Okay, and that's actually it. That's all our enhanced item is going to do. Pretty straightforward, I think. We're just making sure that we get the exact item index and setting its element to +1 if we succeeded. And whether we succeeded or failed, we're just going to remove all of the items that were required from our inventory. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully you got all that. We should be crafting our items now. So if you remember in the last episode, I made my debug key 1, which gave me a bunch of enhancement cores and iron ingots. And we made sure that we had the smithing level acquired. So we're level 1 smith right now. So if I filter available, I'm going to see all my iron ingots here. Max is going to be 200. I'm going to craft them. And boom! I just added all of the iron ingots into my inventory. Which I don't know why that's not removing. Let's check. Shift F1. Slot needed. Yeah, we'll worry about that in another episode when we make our inventory. That way I can actually see what is live inside of my inventory. But that should have removed all of my iron ingots. Maybe I just had way too many. Totally possible. I guess maybe not. Maybe I can just do this forever. So we have some kind of bug here that it's not actually removing them from the inventory, or maybe it's not actually refreshing this properly. Because we do not have, well, maybe, no, we do not have this many iron ingots. Or maybe it's only costing 10? Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. We're going to have to make our inventory component in the next episode, is when we're going to make our inventory, and I'm going to see what is actually going on with that. But anyway, we know that this is working, right? We are able to craft the items. If I were to craft 41 of this, I wouldn't be able to craft it. I don't have enough inventory space. But we're able to craft these items, and it's working based on the inventory that we have. So, yeah, if I were to craft, let's say we craft an iron sword. Now I want to enhance. I can take my iron sword, and I should not be able to enhance it because I don't have enhancement cores. So I'm going to press 1, make sure I have all of the stuff I need to enhance it. I'm going to enhance. Now I have 2 iron swords, but max my cores, 1. Boom. Enhancement level success. Now we have enhancement 2, enhancement 3, and now it's going to require 2 cores to max it out. Enhancement 4, enhancement enhancement failed because I didn't actually put any cores in. Enhancement 5, we should probably make sure we have at least 1 core set up before we allow them to hit enhance, otherwise it's just going to fail. So that's a little checksum we'll probably have to do. It's just going to keep taking my iron away, even though I didn't use any cores. But yeah, that is working, okay? So that is good. We're going to make one more thing in this episode, which is going to be to check whether or not we have the classes unlocked to actually use the crafting bench. Because if I duplicate my crafting bench right now, we know that the only class we actually have unlocked is smithing. But if I were to make this the alchemy bench, we will actually be able to use this alchemy bench and view the contents of it. And I don't want players to be able to do that, okay? I want us to basically be forced only to be able to interact with this if we have the class acquired. Also, we see the consumables button from the last episode is working. So I want to make sure that we run a check here to see if the player is actually allowed to interact with this bench before we interact with it. And that's going to be down here in our interactions, kind of just like what we did with can craft item or can gather item. We're going to pretty much see if we can use the crafting bench. And this one's going to be a lot simpler. We're going to take our crafting class because I'm going to end up collapsing this into a node here, just like the gather item. And we're going to see if we have our AC class manager. Get our crafting classes. We're going to see if they contain the crafting class that is of the type that the bench is. And if it contains that crafting class, I'm going to do can interact to true. But we need to run another check here, just like with gathering. We need to see use crafting class. We need to see if use crafting class is true. If use crafting class is true, that is going to be our first in. And if it is not true, then we can just go ahead and interact with this because we're not using crafting classes. Okay. We're going to take this, we're going to get crafting type as string. This is, yes, crafting. And we're going to go ahead and append some values here just to get a little bit more customization so it doesn't say use crafting bench. We're going to say use space, this crafting type is string, and then space bench, or space whatever you want here. Again, that's just a little bit of cosmetics. That way it's, when we walk over to it, it's going to say smithing bench, or alchemy bench, or whatever we want it to actually be. Like I said, I'm going to collapse all this. Right click, collapse nodes. This is can use crafting bench. We don't need, I don't know why that says item to find. We don't need 2 of these in here. 1 is perfectly fine. I'm going to open it up and put that in there. Compile, please. Save, please. So now, when I press play, I should be able to walk over to this alchemy bench and... Oh, I guess that makes sense. And then we want to make sure that we actually plug this can interact off of the contains check into the display interact widget. Make sure you actually plug that in, otherwise you're going to get the interaction, yeah, there we go. Otherwise you're going to get the interaction progress bar, but you're not actually going to be able to interact with it. So we should be able to interact with the smithing bench, yeah, just fine. Okay, and that is all for this episode. In the next episode, we are going to be doing the inventory UI. That way when we press I, we can pull up our current inventory, and that's going to help us debug anything we might have messed up so far. It's pretty important that we get that done. If you're enjoying the videos so far, I urge you to join our Patreon. For just $3 a month, you'll get access to all of the videos in this series as soon as I create them. Always available on Patreon, always free, and ready to go. You'll also get a copy of the example project so you can follow along step by step with a real visual guide in the project.